the big question is this: how do pastors like us who remain focused on the mission of Jesus and serving our communities without being distracted by everything in the world around us, how do we increase our effectiveness while living a lifestyle that doesn't compromise our health, our families, or our personal relationships with Jesus? That's the question this podcast is going to answer. I'm Dr. Brandon Party Cooper, and welcome to the Ministry Hackers Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Ministry Hackers Podcast. I'm here with my incredible co-host, Matthew Wozbinski. How's it going, Matt?
It's going pretty good. Just so giving everyone a fair warning, if you hear like a loud boom or a scream, we're recording this like at a different time than we normally do, and my kids should be napping. They are not. And so, so don't be alarmed if you all of a sudden you hear like voices. It's not ghosts. It's just, life with COVID and pandemic and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so give everybody, because I don't know that everybody knows, what is your family makeup?
So I have myself and then my wife, Ashley. We've been married for 5 years. And then we have a daughter, Everly, and she is 2 years old. And then we have a son, Leo, and he is 1 year old. So we have 2 kids that are 2 and under. So that's a lot of fun. So Leo's just starting to walk, which is super exciting. And then Everly is somewhat potty trained. So that is also very exciting. So those are the big things that are happening in our family life.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. So for those who don't know, I have three boys. I have the 6-year-old Aiden, who is a first grader. I have Isaiah, who is 3, about to be 4, and he is in preschool. And then we have 1-year-old Emerson, who has a full head of very curly hair. And so we're kind of both there with the lots of littles.
Yes. Lots of chasing and running, and yes. Always so fun.
Keep us very busy.
Mm-hmm.
So in this episode, we wanted to talk about a challenge or a problem that a lot of churches are finding, and that is how to keep volunteers engaged, particularly those who are not able or comfortable to come to our physical locations. And so all of us have gone through some phase of this, and some of us are still in it, to where we have people who maybe aren't comfortable coming to church yet, and either they want to be involved and we don't know quite how to do that, or we have people who maybe we're a little concerned that if we don't get them involved, we may lose them entirely. So Matt, can you just kind of run through, you are the connections pastor at a multi-site location, one of the sites. And so just kind of give us a rundown of how this has gone for you as the summer has unfolded and as we've come into the fall.
So it's a really interesting dynamic because obviously with COVID, there are some people who are super plugged in, but because of whatever reason, they don't feel comfortable coming to in-person services. So we have people on my team who I would consider high-level leaders. They actually lead teams who have not come back to an in-person service. One, because they are in close contact with someone who is in their 80s. And so they just don't want to risk, getting sick. And then the other one actually works in the medical field. So it's kind of like the reverse. She doesn't want to be sick and then come and expose other people. So both of them are incredibly talented leaders, both very bought into what the church and the mission of the church is doing. But they just don't, feel comfortable coming back. So that's one layer of that. Those ones are a little bit easier because you, with all the technology and stuff like that, you can still kind of involve them in a lot of the things that you're doing. And then the second layer of that is, it's summertime and it is, where you naturally see a dip anyways. We're coming kind of back into that, but even with, schools not really kind of being normal, like they normally are, we're kind of missing out on that normal bump back up that we get with the fall kickoff. You have a lot of people where, maybe they're not malicious or they're not unsaved or they're not anything like that. But I love how you put it. You almost feel like you need to keep them plugged in because it's just easier to like go downhill than it is uphill.
Right.
And so what we're constantly trying to do is find people who maybe were super bought in when we were in-person services before COVID, when they could bring their kids, because we actually have only just opened up our kids ministry within the past couple of weeks. And so we even had a season where you could serve, but we had no kids ministry. So we had some people that said, hey, like, let me know when you have kids ministry, because I can't do the parking team while I
Right.
have a baby. And so there's all of that kind of being mixed together. But what we're also noticing is now you have kids ministry, and those people still might not be coming back.
Right.
Whether that is because of health concerns, or maybe it's just, if we're honest, the convenience of online church, the convenience of having to get the kids together or get up on a Sunday morning and all that sort of stuff, when you can just watch it on your computer or on your phone. And so what we've been really wrestling with is, how do we make sure that those people stay plugged in? So then in, a couple of months, when everything is, as back to normal as we possibly can be, those people already have momentum, they're already bought in, and it's not like you're having to like dig them out, or they've kind of just completely disconnected at this point.
Mhm. Well, and some of that too is that the rhythms of people's weeks is just disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
Even like, as you said, even as we're coming into the fall, I know for me, I kept thinking, oh, I can't wait till the fall to kind of get back in the normal rhythm of things. But even still, it's not normal because, the kids are at school, that school experience is different. And depending on the area that you're in, things are still not open the way you're used to them. I know for us, we found when we got ready to sign up Aiden for soccer, they decided they weren't doing soccer this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to find another soccer league, which now it's just different, everything
Mm-hmm.
running different than what we're used to. And so, yeah, so everybody's rhythms are off. And that includes the Sunday morning. So even though Sunday morning is still there and service is still there and the volunteer, opportunities are still there, the rest of their week is so off that it's hard for them to get back engaged with the Sunday morning experience. The other thing I think that it's also doing is it's revealing to us as pastors and ministry leaders, it's kind of revealing maybe some ugly truths that we're finding. And that is, we've just burned people out over the years. And now that they've been forced to take a break, they've almost taken this big, long, deep breath and said, oh man, I think I'm going to take this break a little longer than planned,
Yeah.
because they're just tired.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, they're hesitant to come back. I think it's also that we have mechanisms and systems in place to run ministries in our church, but what we don't have is we don't have mechanisms and systems in place to necessarily always make sure that our volunteers are okay. One thing that we've implemented, is to make volunteers take. So we run on semesters, so like a 4-month block. We actually have volunteers take one semester off a year. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether they want to or not, it's kind of a built-in, just take a break, take
Mm-hmm.
some time off, take a deep breath, spend time with family, get away, and then reevaluate. If you want to come back and come on board and be a volunteer again, that's great. And what we're finding is that refreshes them, and it invigorates them to come back and be a part. And so most churches, we don't have those systems and mechanisms in place to protect our volunteers and keep them, in the right state of mind that they enjoy and love volunteering. So, Matt, are there any things that you guys are finding systemically or within how you do volunteerism, or, how you manage your volunteers, that maybe you've kind of said, oh, we need to reevaluate that or do that differently?
Yeah, I think that the big thing is we are also a mobile campus. And so that makes it really tough because um, I don't mean this in a negative way, but there's a lot of behind the scenes busy work that goes when you have a established campus.
Mhm.
You can have people come into the office and help make copies and do things like that. But when you're mobile, so much of your attention is focused in on that Sunday. And so one thing that it's really pushed me to do is realize, okay, let's get creative and see what are some things that people can do outside of a Sunday morning that can still keep them somewhat involved. And that helps me out in two ways. One, it keeps them involved, it keeps them serving. So then, even if it is a legitimate reason, like it's a health concern, they can still feel like they're contributing to the mission of the church. This could be something super simple. For example, I'm getting a team of people together to wash tablecloths during the week. We have a lot of older people who don't feel comfortable coming back. But if I say, hey, we have a coffee table, it gets spills on the black tablecloths from time to time. If once a month or every other week, I can drop off a bin that just has tablecloths, can you just during the week, wash them, iron them, and then I will come pick them up on Friday or Saturday. We've had a lot of interest in things like that, where normally that's something I would either do or I would take it to a dry cleaner or something along those lines. And the other thing that it really helps doing is the fact that it gives me a reason to reach out to that person.
Hmm.
It's a consistent touch point where I can say, hey, you normally would be a door greeter, or you would be on the offering team, or you would, be a youth leader, whatever that might be. But because of circumstances, you can't. But this kind of keeps things in line where it gives me a reason to say, hey, twice, once a week, every other week, I'm reaching out to that person to make sure not only the task is done, but kind of use that also as a check for myself to say, okay, I'm going to schedule routine of reaching out to that person and making sure that they're okay, even if I'm not seeing them. Because so often that's when we try to make our connects is Sunday morning, is
Right.
we say, okay, we, have those 30-second conversations in the hallway before and after service, or while they're serving on the thing. But if we're not seeing them, then it can be super easy for even our core volunteers and the people who are super bought in to not talk to those people for months at a time,
Right.
just because they're not coming to us. So
Yep.
if we can give them stuff even outside of a Sunday morning experience, it gives us a reason to it helps us to follow back up with them. Because, we'd like to say that we do that without that, but it also kind of keeps us in check and almost like helps us to kind of keep a tally of that.
Right. Well, and one of the things I think that we're also realizing is we've just made things very complicated. We have
Mhm.
lots of systems, lots of processes, lots of routines. And, me, I'm all on board with good systems that run well. But the reality is too, is, the larger your church gets, the more systems that you need, and then the more people that you need to run those systems. And I don't know about you, even as much as I love systems, managing systems is not always a life-giving experience.
Mhm.
And so it kind of wears people out to, because of the complicated nature of what it takes to run a church. It takes a lot of people to kind of manage all of that, and they just get disoriented. And so making those touch points with them at least gives them the feeling, number one, that they're appreciated. Number two, someone is paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm
Mhm.
not just managing the system. But then three, they feel a part. They feel a part of a team. They feel a part, at least they feel connected to you as the pastor, which is just, is encouraging. And for some people, especially people maybe who prefer to work with systems, maybe they just need like just a little touch point every once in a while. They don't need a lot of attention. In fact, a lot of attention may even make them feel uncomfortable. But giving them just a little bit of a, hey, good job, or hey, what can I do for you? Or, what do you need, to do what you're doing better? Those little touch points, can fill up somebody's, tank, and they can last for another 3-4 weeks without any other connection. And so okay, so then the question is how do we engage those volunteers? And so, Matt, just give us one thing that you guys are doing on your end to try and engage them.
So, so I know you said one, but I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
So there's the tactical side of things. So there's how do we get them to serve? One thing that we're actually looking at implementing soon is getting people to reach out to other people. So a lot of times we put so much of that weight on our own shoulders of I need to call all of my volunteers and I need to check in with all my volunteers. But also, if you have people who are just at home, they're good people for they are enjoyable people to be around, they're talkative, they're good solid leaders, because like I said, a lot of these people that are kind of on our team, they've been vetted, they are good solid people that know what they're doing. They just can't come to an in-person service and do what they would normally do. And
Mhm.
so if I give maybe 8 to 10 names to that person and say, hey, just sometime in the next 2 weeks, just reach out to these people and say, hey, how's your family doing? How are you guys doing the online school, or are you doing in-person school? How's your job going? Oh, you just got laid off, or oh, that's great that your hours are picking up again. Just kind of checking in on people. One will empower those people to feel like they're a part of something, even if they can't come on a Sunday morning. And then two, it's taking things off of your plate. So then you're not having to make 100 phone calls a week to try to keep in touch with people who may be attending or may not be attending. Um, so that's kind of like a really big like practical thing.
Right.
um Another thing, like you said, that's really life-giving is having just regular small conversations with them. One, I hate talking on the phone, if I'm entirely honest. I hate it. It's like the worst thing. I would rather text than talk on the phone. I just talk in person or text. I don't like talking on the phone. And so phone calls are something that I've kind of avoided like the plague. I just don't like doing it. But I think a lot of times we can psych ourselves out with phone calls. We think it's going to be this big dramatic thing. And what I've realized is if I kind of set the parameters and make it a regular routine with, let's just say, your core leaders. So people maybe who are leading a team or who are heavily invested in the mission of the church. So we're not saying every single congregant, but just, your core people on your team.
Right.
If you just say, hey, can I call for just about 10 minutes and just kind of touch base with you? How's your life going? How's your spiritual walk going? Are you serving in a different area? Are you attending a small group? Just basically like that.
Right.
And if you put those parameters on it and say, hey, it's just a 10-minute conversation, you're not going to get their life story every single time. Like there might be an occasional time where it bleeds a little bit longer than that. It might be a little bit shorter than that. But what it's kind of taught me is, like you said, a lot of times that's all that people really need. It's just that couple of minutes of, oh, you stop, like on your commute, call somebody, just in between meetings. Okay, this meeting ended 15 minutes early, so I'm going to give this person a call, just talk to them for 5 minutes. And that can be life-giving for weeks and even months,
Right.
because what it shows is, okay, even if I'm not attending, even if I'm not serving on your team, you still care about how my life is going. When I was in student ministry, the big thing was, students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Having a student come to youth group was huge. Me going to their basketball game was worth like 10 youth services, because what it showed was like I was invested in them. And I think this is a really great opportunity for us to do that with our volunteers, is even those people who say, whether it's a valid reason or it's not a valid reason, it's just, hey, my schedule is all out of whack, and so online's just easier for me, or I have some health concerns and I just don't feel comfortable. Whatever that might be, the fact that you are reaching out to them and saying, hey, I care about you, even if you're not holding open doors for me, even if you're not serving coffee, even if you're not on the usher team, I still want to know how you're doing, because you matter. And that can be huge. And then once we kind of get back into, hopefully, life as usual, then those people are going to want to serve again, because they feel like, okay, you don't like me because I'm accomplishing a task for you. You like me because, I'm made in the image of God, and you feel like I am worth your time, and I want to serve alongside you because of that.
Right. Yep. Well, and with your phone calls, I would also go to send handwritten letters or thank yous.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lost art that we don't use as often. We go to email or text a lot of times. But really, if you, just take the time to write a quick letter or a quick thank you and send that out, it just, kind of like you're saying, it just makes a lot more, you invest a little bit of time and it makes a huge impact. And so, kind of utilizing that. One of the things I think, though, overall, and this is, I think, a problem in a lot of areas of church, but especially in the volunteerism area, is that we rely too much on guilt motivation. We obligate people to be a part. We tell them, oh, well, you're a part of the kingdom of God, or you're the part of the body of Christ, and so this is your duty, or this is your responsibility, or whatever. And though there is truth in that, a lot of times obligatory motivation only lasts as long as somebody will allow themselves to feel guilty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moment they say, you know what, I'm done feeling guilty, they're done being a volunteer.
Yep.
Whereas if we add value and we invest in them and we create an experience for them that they can't get enough of, they will keep coming back for more and more and more. And so I think as we're, looking at, okay, we have volunteers who are good quality volunteers who want to be involved, or maybe they're not saying, hey, I want to be involved, but that they would be if there was an opportunity for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now in this time, asking ourselves as pastors and ministry leaders, what can I do to add value? What can I do to add value to their daily life, to, what's going on in their week? What can I do to add value? Even from, like, I'm preaching a sermon on Sunday, how can I add value to their life throughout the course of the week that's, somehow, tied to that? And so when it comes to our volunteers, one of the biggest value adds is a lot of times just giving them access to us as pastors.
Mm-hmm.
They want to ask us questions, or they want to, maybe they want to ask us the questions they've never had the chance to, or they want to maybe learn something from us, or whatever the case is. Finding ways for us to find ways to give them access and add value to their everyday lives, to not just their volunteerism, how to make them better volunteers, but how do we make them better parents? How do we make them better leaders in their jobs? How do we make them better community engaged neighbors? Like, how do we help them accomplish the dreams and the goals and fulfill what God's called them to be as people not just as their role at the church. And so
Mhm.
just increasing that value and giving them access, I think, is a huge, just a huge shift, and
Yeah,
something
for
that as
sure.
pastors and ministry leaders, we just have to focus more on.
Mhm.
Okay, so are there any volunteer positions or roles or things? I know you mentioned the um, doing the tablecloths. Are there
Mhm.
any other things you guys have created uh, in this time that you didn't have or hadn't thought of before?
Yeah. So another thing, so we haven't been able to take advantage of this just because we're mobile. The one big thing is think about things like your communion team. Are they setting up on Sundays? Or are they setting up before? Now that we have the prepackaged stuff because of COVID restrictions, um, a lot of our teams are saying, hey, if you can come in on Friday or Saturday, it's not like it has to be refrigerated or whatever, but like you can come and set up the communion tables. Another big thing is clean teams, where it says, hey, you'll be the only person in the building, like maybe you and your spouse or like whatever that might be, but you can come and help sterilize things either before or after service. So then you don't have to be like in direct contact with people, and then you'll be probably the most safe because you'll be all covered up and you'll be surrounded by cleaner. So just stuff like that, stuff that might be off of a Sunday morning, tech team, things like that. Doing things like video announcements. Hey, can you come in? And it'll just be me and you and iPhone. Like, and so what are some things that will get them away from the big group of people? And also don't write people off just because they aren't attending on a Sunday morning.
Right.
So like, so for example, if you have a great communicator, but at the same time, they're just not able to come in person right now, don't write them off and say, well, once they start coming back, then we can get them in video announcements,
Right.
because that person can still serve even if they're not coming in person on a Sunday morning. So, don't be looking at your pool of people as, well, these are the people who have come back to in-person services. Look at your pool as the people who have come and are serving or have served in the past, and then say, okay, well, how can we have you still do your job, still do what God has called you to do, maybe just not on a Sunday morning, but that can still empower that Sunday morning experience.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that um, people are, again, people want to be involved on some level, and we have to be creative, even have fun with how we get involved. I know for me, one of the things I've watched a lot of is watching some of the morning talk shows or the late night shows, and
Mhm.
just getting ideas about how we can, do video announcements and how we can do other engagements throughout the week, online and different things like that by watching these, because this isn't something just the church is dealing with.
Mhm.
Everyone is dealing with it. And so there are so many things we can learn from others outside the church on how they're kind of problem solving as they go. And then we can implement that in ours.
Mhm.
Because one of the things a lot of churches are finding when we switched over to online church, there's a lot of management and a lot of pieces that go with that. And so, we've ramped up some of our social media presence, and
Mhm.
we've ramped up our video production, and we've ramped up all of these pieces. And so that's another place where volunteers can fit in, getting people, maybe you have a couple different platforms on social media and you have somebody who is managing those two, being a
Mhm.
social media coordinator for those. Um, Maybe you have people researching content, or you have people who are, again, doing the video announcements, or doing slides or whatever that you can then use for the online or the social media pieces. So just trying to think of, like, what are the things that that can be done. Even another one I just thought of was doing online events. And so we're seeing across the board, conferences are going to an online format or online summits, and some of them are being very creative about how they just create an online experience that can, suffice for the physical experience they would have had. Well, what can you give a volunteer to do and say, hey, create this online event or this online um, experience that people can have, whether it's your small group can do, or whether it's people in the church can do, or you're doing it for the people in the community, whatever the case is. And let them be creative and let them have fun, and just create some momentum and some energy and some engagement with the people in your church as well as people outside of the church. So, I think the biggest thing that maybe would be an umbrella in all of this as we're having this conversation is we, as pastors and ministry leaders, we have to think outside of the box.
Mhm.
We have to think outside of what we have always done, and just start becoming creative on how do we get people involved? How do we give them something to do, and not just to fill a hole, but something that they want to do, something they're excited to do. Even asking them, hey, I know you can't come to service, but is there anything that you want to do to serve the community? And they may have an idea that you hadn't even thought of. And
Mhm.
so just touching base with them and engaging with them and seeing what they can come up with. So we're always better with, more heads coming up with ideas. So
Yeah, and I think that even like you said, be creative. So if someone's like, "Hey, I can't come, but I can watch online," then tell them act like online is the same as you would in regular church.
right.
Be in the if you're watching it on Facebook, be in the chat. If you see, empower them. Maybe you even make a prayer team for chat for strictly online. I know that we've done that where we will have pastors or leaders that are online, and people can request prayer, and then we can shoot them a
Yep.
private message and say, "Hey, I am one of the prayer team leaders from whatever church. Is there any way that I can pray with you?" And then say, "Okay, I'm gonna also, you can send them to a digital connect card and say, 'Hey, our team prays over these. If you feel comfortable filling that out.'"
Yeah.
And just that's the other thing too is those chat experiences. If people are talking, then people are more likely to jump in, ask questions, kind of get that conversation going. So if you can say, hey, your job is to be a host on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you might be watching online, then they still go forward with that same being intentional that they would if they were greeting somebody at the door. You see someone pop on and say, hey, where's everybody watching from? Oh, my living room in my pajamas. Oh, it's so great to see you. You know what I mean? Bringing that welcoming environment. So like you said, a lot of it is just thinking outside of the box and saying, how can you do what God has called you to do, even if you're not physically in the building with us on Sundays?
Right. Yep. Exactly. Well, on that note, I think we will wrap up this episode. So thank you so much for Matt, for your input on
Well,
this
you're
subject.
very welcome for me. You're very welcome for me.
So, and with what you do in your role, this is going to be an ongoing conversation for you. So,
Absolutely.
and so I think that you will definitely have some insights even as we go further into this, because as we all know, this isn't ending anytime soon. So,
Mhm.
we're going to have to navigate this for at least the next 6 months, if not
Yeah,
more. So,
for sure.
all right. Thank you, Matt. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.